Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you very much. It's a really great pleasure to be back at the University of Indonesia again. I always enjoy coming back here and seeing friends. In fact, every time I come back, I have more friends to see. So this is just really, really wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Today I will give a short lecture on innovations in public sector reform in Asia. I came to Asia around more than 10 years ago, and my motivation then was the strong belief that there are very interesting things happening in Asia, but we don't have enough scholars who are reporting about them. And it is not about people in Indonesia telling the Indonesian government how to reform Indonesian government or what innovations are happening in Indonesian government. But it's about, for example, Indonesian scholars telling the rest of the world something interesting happening in Indonesia that might be relevant for other people to listen to, maybe in China, Germany, or America, or Brazil. So my mission is to understand and to document what interesting innovations happening in public sector reform in Asia that other people in the world, including New Zealand, might want to know about. But I really do think we have something to offer to the world, but we have to be sure that it is offered to the world. So that is what this is about. Next slide, please. I have a little bit too many slides, so I'm going to go through them, but I know everybody can both read slides and listen to me at the same time. So, like so. So my claim is that there are actually many examples of very innovative public sector reforms in Asia, and that is what I want to talk to you in depth about 3 of them. Next slide, please. This is just a little bit about me, but you already know about me, so next slide. Okay, so in the bigger picture for students, there have been many public sector reforms around the world. And here's a list of public sector reforms that you often talk about in your classes. These are used around the world to make public sector more effective, more efficient, more relevant. Any country that is looking to improve their public services has at some point undertaken these or will undertake them or like so. One of them, for example, is e-government. As you maybe know, yesterday we again signed double degree. There will be a double degree program between Victoria University and the Victoria University of Wellington in the area of e-government, because the transformation of public services to e-government is really important. There's no question about that. All your ministers agree about that. Everybody in the world agrees with it. It needs to do. So it's also not something you do one time and then you don't do no more. There continue to be new ways to do e-government. Decentralization, very important for countries like Indonesia, in fact, very relevant for every country in Southeast Asia. You cannot understand the development of ASEAN or China without decentralization. People who go to China, who never been to China, think, oh, Beijing must be so powerful. No. No. The story of China is the development of 30 regional, provincial capitals that have developed as industrial engines. The story of China is about decentralization. The story of Indonesia is about decentralization. You need to decentralize. That's why you need e-government. Everybody knows that. Okay. Privatization, using the private sector more importantly. There were performance management. I'm currently working with Menpan on performance management in Indonesia, and I'll give some examples of that. So if these are some new terms for you, then this is what public management is today. This is why you are learning about these things. And people become expert in these things. And there are innovations happening all around the world, because the world is more and more the same. Every country has the same problems. Trust me, you have pollution, New Zealand thinks they have pollution, China thinks they have pollution. Maybe different kind of pollution, but like so. You have poverty, New Zealand has poverty. You have child abuse, we have child abuse. You have and so on. Whatever problem you have, every other country also has. Today we are more and more the same. More and more the same. Even if you want to talk about different systems, different democratic systems and non-democratic systems, those countries all have the same problems. Next slide, please. So, if we look at the innovation, it's not always about new innovations. There's still a lot to do with existing reforms, but there have been some new innovations that I want to talk about. There's always a new frontier. So many in the world is doing something new. There are 200 countries in the world. I don't know how many provinces. I cannot imagine how many cities there are in the world. A couple million, I imagine. And somebody's always doing something new. And we can learn from that. That's the idea. If we look at today, what this reform should be doing, there's a merging between public management and public policy. And so we want the public sector reforms to address these things. We want public sector reforms to do a better job at addressing previously poorly addressed issues. So if you think previously you haven't addressed traffic jams very well, then we need some innovations in public management that help address traffic jams better. And I'll give some example. There are reforms should also improve equity and well-being of citizens. They should improve the perception of the public that what the government does is actually important and useful. Many people do not believe that what government does is useful, maybe because they don't know the good work we do. Government does a very bad job at marketing. We could learn from the private sector. We need approaches that are sustainable. We need to build up the capacity of people to deal with things like NGOs and like so. And every government has something dysfunctional. There's not a government in the world that's more totally functional. But we need to somehow identify what is dysfunctional about government and try to push that aside and not let that interfere in other parts of government that do work well. Keep that aside. Next slide, please. So I just have a few more words before I give 3 examples. A few things. So public sector reforms, they're a little bit unevenly adopted. Some cities, some places, some countries, this is a little bit too much volume, I think. Is this too much volume? Is this better? Oh, this is better? Oh, okay. Good. Okay. So public sector reforms are unevenly adopted. Some cities are more innovative than others, some countries are more innovative than others. And so there's a challenge of helping those jurisdictions that are not so innovative to become more innovative. Innovation is very important in the world. In both East and West, leadership matters a whole lot. There's some East and Western leadership, maybe different style than Indonesian style leadership, but we all know good leadership when we see it. And today I'm telling you, leadership looking more and more the same. And in 10 years from now, I'm not even quite sure there will be a meaningful difference. It'll be little nuances that don't matter. Okay, so let me just do that. Next slide, please. So I want to give you 3 examples. So next one. So I have 3 stories to tell. Innovations are usually around storytelling, how things happen. This first story is actually 10 years old. It comes from Korea, but there have not been enough people in the world who are telling the story. So even though this is 10 years old, maybe you've not heard the story. So that's a new story for you. This is a story of a previous mayor Oh of Seoul. Now in Korea, when you are mayor of Seoul, that's really important because half the population of Korea lives in Seoul. And if you put in good mayor of Seoul, then maybe you become the next president of Korea. So this is a very important job like so. And when he became mayor, there were 2 things. First of all, he wanted Seoul to become a more famous city, like London, Paris, Rome, New York, Seoul. If you've been to Seoul, you said, not quite. But that's the ambition. And it could take 20, 30 years. You may not do it for 20, 30 years, but that's what he wanted to do. Very good ambition. And he said something else too. So far in the history following, leadership in East Asia and Southeast Asia, the mayor would come with 1 or 2 big projects. And Seoul has had so many big successful projects. Seoul has some of the best subway MRT systems in the world. Seoul has wonderful universities. Seoul has an excellent hospital. It has hosted the Summer Olympics, the Winter Olympics. All the big things Seoul has done. And still it is not like New York, Paris, Rome. So what is wrong with this leadership? He said, well, what is wrong with this leadership is we don't need 1 or 2 new big projects. We need 1,000 smaller projects. In fact, he said, if you're a manager in Seoul, in order to make future promotion, you must have new ideas. I want you to come up to give me creative ideas. We will choose the ideas. You are not responsible for implementing the ideas. But you cannot be promoted around here if you don't have good ideas for a new vision, or how to help your department or the city do it better. So he created a program called Creativity Management that required people to come up with new ideas, and those ideas would be evaluated. It gives a city a whole big box of great ideas. Next slide. Okay. So his vision was to create a clean and attractive city. This was 10 years ago. And in his view, 10 years ago, to be a creative city, I know you can't read this, but it would be a city of economic vitality, culture. Big, famous cities have a lot of culture. High culture, low culture, punk culture, older culture everywhere, all different kind of culture. If you think about why people like Bali, it's a culture of the place. We recognize great cities as having culture. Culture is very important. Culture of welfare. There is no city in the world where poor people cannot live. Every great city has a lot of poor people, and they all live very well there, or thrive well. It's challenging, but a great city cannot push poor people out. Everybody must have a place. People must participate in a city of fresh air. Now, if you talk about environmental stuff today, everybody says, yeah, I got it. But then, 10 years ago, that was new. That was new. So this is his idea, and he wanted people to come up with ideas, creatively create ideas in that area. And okay, next slide. So what actually happened? Well, first of all, he had to give training sessions for people how to be creative. And they actually organized training sessions for teaching civil servants how to come up with creative ideas and how to talk to your superior when you have a creative idea. That in our culture is the problem. So they actually created a space on Friday afternoon where the supervisor would be there and people were talking as equal. Only on Friday afternoon, okay? Monday morning, the superior, the boss, and the boss, okay? But Friday afternoon, they found a way of getting people to talk. That was a huge, big deal. If you know Asian culture, you know how important this is, what I'm just saying. That was revolutionary. It can be done. It can be done. Well, what happened was that in about a 6-year period, the city of about, they have 40,000 employees, of which 15,000 employees work in the central metropolitan government, and these are the people we're talking about. They came up with almost 250,000 ideas. So this is not just a little wooden box. They had an electronic system where people would deposit ideas and they would get it evaluated within 3 weeks. And it didn't take many people, actually. There were just 10 people who organized this whole process. It was not an impossible idea. But they got wonderful ideas, and this just shows, in terms of graphics, that indeed it changed the culture. Before this happened, only about 15% of people said that their unit was innovative, but after this, 2 years later, about 1/3 of people said their unit was innovative. So if you have a unit with maybe 15, 20 people, and only 15 people say my place is innovative, that's only 2 or 3 people. Those 2 or 3 people are going to feel very isolated. If you have 20, 30 people, and about 5 or 6 people say it's innovative, now you start to get critical mass. So it really changed. Next slide, please. So here are some ideas that came up. This one? Okay. I'll use whatever you tell me. Oh, this is better. So here's an example for your MRT system. Because soon you're going to have a wonderful metro in Jakarta. And somebody came up with a creative idea that at the exit of the metro, you could put a little blue box so people could take their metro card and swipe it. And from that would come a very, very small donation to social services. Good try. What could try? This did not come from mayor idea or anything else. What happened was that after 1 year, they collected more money from private donations than they got from the national government for social services. Who knew? Who knew this was possible? Here's another example. So, this just one more example, then I'll go to a second example. So this is like a small example, but a big deal. This is interesting. Somebody had the idea to make the world's first floating opera house on a river. So through Seoul is this big river, the Han River. It's not a very pretty river, to be honest, but it's a big river. And somebody had the idea of floating opera house on the river. Why would you want to build a floating opera house on the river? Well, by the way, most of these ideas came from civil servants because it was required. Citizens could also give ideas, but 90% came from civil servants because they know the business, right? Okay. It was a brilliant solution because the city owns the river. You know how difficult it is in Jakarta or any other city to take a big area away from people and to redevelop that. It could take years of lawsuits and difficulties. You know, the city, they could immediately build. And the Koreans know how to build. In 3 years, they had the Opera House. It was much cheaper to build on the river than to build on the land. Who knew? This does not come from a political official, okay? This comes from civil servant in planning who knows the business. And so there are many examples that they have like so. And the story of this is after about 10 years, you can compare earlier Seoul to Taipei, and I live in Taipei. Before this, both cities very good, very good places to live. They're not Paris, but they're good places to live. 10 years later, Taipei is still a good city to live in. It is some development, but not so much. It's still a good place. Seoul, however, has gone like this, because they have thousands and thousands of improvements like this. Now, here's an example of an innovation, a practice that I've not seen other cities or countries easily adopt, but it exists and it comes from Asia. Why does the world not know about this? Because there's not enough people writing about this. It exists, but we don't know about it. That is why I am here. Next slide, please. So this is a summary of some of the highlights of this particular innovation. And the idea there is to use new ideas for both managers and the employees. We don't use in Asia the ideas, the creative abilities of managers and employees enough. People don't speak up. And here's a very specific, very practical approach for getting people to be more innovative. It could not be easier. It could not be more, it's not just about doing it. But before you do it, you have to know it. And this is why knowledge is so important. Next slide. Innovation from Indonesia. Okay, so if you know about performance management, you know about logic models and the importance of focusing on outcomes, outputs and outcomes. One of the highlights or frontiers of that for everybody is how to use logic models to deal with very difficult problems, like how to create new entrepreneurs. This is called cross-cutting logic models because they have to cross-cut many different programs need to come together. This is an example from that a governor provided in Jakarta to create more entrepreneurs in his area. Next slide. So if you want to promote tourism, for example, you have to bring many things together. And people in Indonesia are now beginning to think about how to create cross-cutting logic models to promote, say, tourism. Because tourism is not only about marketing. It's how do you get the tourist to the beach? What is the safety for the tourist? What is being offered on that place that is distinctive? What distinctive cultural or natural resources are there? And in Indonesia, you need to develop other places in Bali. Bali having traffic jams now, right? So, and you are beginning to do that, and this is the beginning of thinking there. This is not totally innovative, it's innovative for Indonesia. And other places are beginning to do this, but in truth, in the rest of the world, we don't do this so well. So this is something that everywhere we are using, and there may be some examples from this in Indonesia that could be useful. Next slide. Here's another example of decreasing poverty. Everybody wants to decrease poverty. Talking about a cross-cutting model. We spoke about that, but maybe some new ideas will come. I have some ideas for that at local level, how to do poverty reduction better. And this is clearly that if Indonesia had some better practices, then you would probably have something to tell the rest of the world. Next slide. But now it's become more interesting. But Indonesia has many islands. We're the fourth largest country in the world, okay? And what is important is not that you have one innovation that happened in some city. That is nice, congratulations. The question is how you get 500 other cities to use the innovation too in some way. In Indonesia, because you're a unitary government, you have a big advantage over America. Huge advantage. You're a unitary government. You have a national government. If it had the capability, it can identify innovations and help spread those innovations to lower levels in other cities. America as a federal system cannot do that. They can give money to help to promote that, but they cannot require it. They don't have the same tools that you have in Indonesia. So here's the idea of taking a innovation here, so getting from city or province to national level, so that the minister and the ministry knows about this, and then pushing it down throughout all of Indonesia. And I think in the next 2 years we'll see innovations in that area coming out of Indonesia, if it can do that. That would be new. If you think about the job, this is really important for the development of Indonesia, because it's not one innovation that matters. It's when innovation is adopted 100 times over. Next slide. And now it becomes even more interesting through performance accountability, that you can assign officials from a national and provincial level to a local level, and you can actually make them accountable for those results in those cities. So, or those provinces. So if you knew how to better reduce poverty, say, and you have some models for that, you can actually appoint officials whose job is to implement those models in those cities or counties, and you can hold them accountable because you now have data collection both at local level and at national level. That is a frontier for public management, and you can do it right here in Indonesia. So this is a second example of innovations in public service reform that are very directly benefit to the purposes that I said before about producing better results for the citizens, and more equity, and more sustainability. Next slide. Oh, so, right. So here are what this example shows. What Indonesia are these things over here, and it addresses how to better poorly address issues, things that we thought were too complex, that you think you cannot address. We are now beginning to do this better. Maybe not perfect, but our job is not to make the world perfect. Our job is to make it just better. To make it better, we can do this. There will be new structures, but through outcome orientation. Next slide. The third thing that I want to talk about innovation is in the area of leadership. And I want to show you some research, because as academics we do research and students say, what is this research you're doing, how is this helping, like so on and so forth. I lived in Taiwan, and in Taiwan we were able to survey all of the senior officials who directly report to ministers. You cannot do that in most countries. To send a survey, we have people there are about 600 people in Taiwan who directly report to a minister or vice minister, and we were able to, about 450 of them actually were in the role. We were able to identify them. We were able to send people to each of these people, give them a survey that they were completing on the spot, so we were certain that they completed it and not their secretary. Taiwan had something to contribute to the world. This is what you can do in Taiwan. And I was very interested about these senior officials being entrepreneurial, wanting to create new programs and new policies. I don't have enough time to talk about all the research, but I want to show you this graph over here. So executive entrepreneurship is about public officials undertaking initiative to create new programs and policies. They also had a ranking of different departments. It was an intersubjective, expert-driven kind of ranking of the different ministries and agencies and like so. And what this shows a little bit, of course, is that the more entrepreneurial the senior managers are, the better ranking a little bit the department is. That's nice. But in my mind, what this really shows is that the more leadership that senior officials take, it dramatically reduces poor performance, poor rankings. In fact, it cuts the poor rankings in half by more than 50%. Meaning, when senior officials undertake more initiative to take programs, those departments are less likely to be poor and mediocre and provide bad public services. We want senior officials to take leadership. Leadership matters. That is what this shows. Next slide. So now here's some things from New Zealand. I believe that New Zealand is part of Asia. There's some people who might disagree with me, but often when people talk about leadership reform or leadership training, they think about retraining lower levels, supervisors. They need to have better, like some more leadership. But in New Zealand, they started at the top. They said, no, leadership starts at the top. If we need to have better leadership, we need to start with the senior leadership, not the bottom leadership, but the senior leadership. So they redesigned what they thought was important for senior leaders to be focusing on for the next 4 years, and keep it simple. You cannot ask leaders to focus on 100 different things. If you have 100 different priorities, you have no priority. So they focused on 4 specific things. That was the first thing. About thinking about the future and making results happen, like so. They also started to think about a pipeline of officials. Who's currently like an echelon 3 who might be promotable to echelon 2? And what experiences are they having? If you want to break through silos, give these people a couple of years job in very different ministries before they come back to the ministry, so they have a broader point of view. This is not a new idea, but nobody really doing it in the world. What would happen if you forced people to work 4 or 5 years in other places before they came back? They would have a much bigger vision. Much, much better. Next slide. And anyway, to deal with the very top officials, they also they put them through a very deep analysis of their capabilities. Those 4 areas, each area had 4 areas, and the bottom line is, some deal with people, some deal with making results happen, some deal with focusing, helping to promote subordinates, focusing on their talent, having good character, so very broadly. And you can see that the blue here is where the senior leaders had some deficiencies needed to work on. Senior leaders are not perfect in every area. So these are the 248 top senior civil servants in New Zealand. They put them through a very deep assessment. And from that, they started to think about, you know, if you have this strength with this weakness, maybe you should be in a job that's more with strategy, less with people. Maybe if you're good with people, motivating people, but not good at strategy, maybe you should be in this job. And they started to move people around. You don't often see this. I presented this in China to an official of the Chinese Communist Party, and they do agree that this is what they need to do. So this is the innovation and public sector reform in the area of leadership, focusing more clearly on developing, preparing leaders for the next job, evaluating them well, giving them very good analysis, bringing the psychologists, understanding what a person is good at, what they're not good at, give them the feedback. And from there then starting to develop the subordinates of those leaders. Let's first start with leadership at the top and then work down. Next slide. Another innovation which I adapted from England, but they did it different ways. In New Zealand, of course, the senior officials, like the Director General, is responsible for the leadership development. And they bring in outsiders to evaluate how good an agency or ministry is performing. It's a very detailed assessment in different strategic areas. And they put that report online for anybody to see. And the report includes recommendations and a response by the ministry as to what they should be working on or will be working on over the next few years. And there's a follow-up a couple years later to see whether or not the official actually did that. And the senior leader's performance, his compensation, is tied to how well they perform, and this report is part of the discussion that goes into the compensation of the senior officials. And anybody, so you can download this, by the way, this is online, you can download, see what would a report like this look like, to ensure that any ministry, be it on fisheries or agriculture or transportation, is in fact doing well or not. And they can drive innovation, like so. And the link is over there. Next slide. Next slide. So from this presentation, I think I want to draw a few conclusions or points for you. I think first of all, there are many innovations being done in Asia and different countries. It's not in old textbooks that come from America or the UK. We need to have better knowledge of the innovations that are happening right here under our noses, right here that we don't even know about. That's number one. And here are some of the areas. I think another thing that we see is upscaling and impact is everything. It used to be when people talk about innovation, about doing something new. But that's not where the impact is. The case in Indonesia, in making cross-cutting programs happening in many different cities or islands, shows you, or the issue of Korea, it's not that somebody has a suggestion. If you're thinking that's not really new because what's a suggestion box? Anybody can do it. You are correct, but you know what is different? 250,000 ideas. Let me put it in more popular terms. The innovation of Apple is not that you have a good smartphone in your pocket. You know what the real innovation is of Apple? That they sold 1 billion iPhones. 1 billion. That is impacting the world. Not one smartphone, 1 billion smartphones. And that is what we do in the public sector. We don't do one thing. We do it 1 million times over. We do it 100 times over. So focusing more on those systems of replicating these things 100 times, 1,000 times, 1 million times. That is what we do. That's what some businesses do, and so that is what upscaling means. Increasing the frequency and doing the things that really impact previously difficult problems that we are now resolving. So I think that is the nature of innovations that we are looking for right now. And here are the emphases, the characteristics of reforms or innovations that we are now looking for. I think a final thing is that if you look around Asia, the capacity of public administration, teaching, and research is not that big. That is why I came to Asia, to help work with people here to identify things from Asia that the rest of the world really needs to know about. And this is just 3 examples of that. And I really hope that in the near future, you all will be contributing to innovations in Indonesia that we can share with the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your nice presentation, Professor Ivan. So there are many new ideas, especially from Seoul, yeah, that maybe can be adapted for the government of Indonesia. But we have also a number of problems here, so maybe we can discuss it later. I'm interested in the digital wall. Maybe our faculty can build a kind of digital wall for thesis proposal, right? But maybe it's scary for the students. This is marriage proposal, but maybe we can have a thesis proposal. Okay, now is a session for Q&A. So maybe for the first session, I can invite 3 students here. Maybe some of you want to ask something about innovation or reform in other countries or from Indonesia also. Yeah.
Morning, my name is Fauzia Mauriska, and I want to tell you something. There are a lot of population in Indonesia, and this situation become a challenge for government to do innovation in public sector reform, while actually Indonesia has a low budget. Indonesia budget is around 1.6 trillion. And what is the best solution for this situation to create innovation reform, even in human resources or even in infrastructure, but with limited budget? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the question. Next question. Yeah, okay.
Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Linda from Public Administration, and I want to give you some equation about Indonesia have many potential, such as they have a large of island. And what do you think if we do the reform, especially for the innovation for Indonesia? Should we do? We could improve our potential. We should use our potential, or just or how about we don't have a potential such as, and maybe we have a lot of potential, but we can to explore the potential a lot. And if we want to do the reform, the first, should we use the potential usefully? And second, if we have a lack of potential in performance like leadership, meaning in leadership in Indonesia, we don't have like a senior leadership like in New Zealand. Should we do like that, or we should do a new innovation in like a culture from Indonesia? What do you think about that? Thank you.
Probably one more question for the first session. From this section, yes? Okay, thank you. Wait.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Ega Abraham Rumbai, and in this opportunity, I want to ask something about giving innovations, especially to the local government. Because in the situation is in Indonesia, when the central government say to the local government that they have potential, they can do some reforms in maybe the human resources, and maybe they can make some project, maybe they can make a dam, maybe they can make some new kind of business. The local government said, no, we better do it ourselves, we can do it by ourselves. And I think that the central government is trying to control us. So when Indonesia is faced by this kind of situation, what should we better do so that we can manage to reform Indonesia itself to a better situation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Those are three excellent questions. I thank you very much. And they all come together. They all hang together in some way. Talk about the low budgets and what potentials. A few things. First of all, in Asia, budgets for government are among the smallest in the world by population. You may think you have too little government, but in reality, compared to America and Europe, you have you may think you have too much, but you actually have too little government. And so that is something that you need to somehow work on. But it must be said that the governments, the numbers in other countries come from local government, not from national government. So the issue is not that your national government is too small, although some offices really are too small. But really your local government capabilities and state levels, this is what needs further development. So when it comes about potentials, the trend in the world would be for central government to require states and local governments to engage in strategic planning and for them themselves to identify their potential. So I agree, it's not for central bureaucrats to say what the potential is of a city or a region to do. The city or region need to come together and figure it out themselves. There are tools for that, there's strategic planning, there are all kinds of rules for that. And so, for example, in Menpan, your effort of performance accountability that annually ranks cities and states for how well they do, it pushes people to do better in that area. And that's a kind of model that one can do for identifying strategically the potential of different cities. Once cities do that, then the central government can be there with some carrots. They can give some incentive to help to develop that. But if you have scarce resources in the central government, where do you want to put them? Do you want to put them in states and local governments that are doing the right thing? So you can both push local governments to do the right thing, and then you can give them incentives and rewards for doing the right thing. So your innovations will be in that area. You can ask people to make innovations for whatever they think their priorities are. If they think a priority that they have natural resources, and there are some places in Indonesia that have wonderful natural resources that could be that are beginning to be tourism destinations, helping to develop that further in a rational and strategic way, and then promoting that. If other people think that they have mining or natural resources opportunities that should be promoted, fine. If people think that they can do their coffee agriculture or some other agriculture better, that is what they should be focusing on, fine. Let them people, the regions need to come together to figure it out for themselves. This is not about the national government setting priorities for lower levels, no. But I think if you do that, I think you will create new innovations at different local levels and state levels in ways that we cannot imagine. And basically, that's at a national level what the mayor of Seoul as a city tried to do. He said to the managers, you have to identify new ideas for your departments. And they came up with ideas that people cannot imagine. Not every idea was adopted, not every idea was implemented. Some may have been too costly, whatever. But that's the first step. The first step is to come up with creative ideas and to mobilize the region for realizing that. Money is very interesting. We have a lot of money in the world. A lot of money in the world. What we don't have is sometimes enough leadership and cities coming together to capture that money.
Thank you very much. So we have 5 minutes more, so maybe 1 or 2 questions. And then, okay, Mr. Rudy.
Mr. Rudy.
My name is Rudy. I'm a student in the PSP class, Pak. I'm year 2017. I'm just rolling in this university, Pak. Yeah. Thank you for your comprehensive presentation, Evan. I'd like to comment a little bit about the innovation in Indonesia. Back to 2013, I guess, when I'm helping Professor Eko Prasojo as a Vice Minister, we are introducing a new innovation competition in the Ministry of Administrative Reform, Sinovic. In the first years, we got about 500 innovation from local government all around Indonesia. Every year they increase, and now about 3,000 innovations coming from local governments, also from the central ministries. But in my opinion, Evan, that Indonesian innovation is still focusing on trying to do something a little bit better, a little bit efficient, but not to improve the welfare for the citizen, for the people. I think this is the ultimate outcome supposed to be from the innovation. Why we have innovation if people still suffering, people still poor, etc. That's my sharing about innovation in Indonesia. Now, knowing your story about how Seoul metropolitan government have the ideas, I think Indonesia need a more sort of working mechanism. How from ideas become the policy, from knowledge to action. I think we need that kind of capacity, that competencies, because I don't think that most Indonesian bureaucracy have their paradigm that they must innovate, they must do faster, better, cheaper, or something that introduced way back maybe 30 years ago by Gabler and Osborne. And I think a lot of Indonesian bureaucracy is still operating like business as usual. I just want your comment on that. Thank you, Evan.
Thank you, Pak.
Dr. Rudy is good. You're very lucky to have people like Rudy. He puts his point. He sees very clearly. So this is very good. I thank you very much for that. Thank you very much. The thoughts around that is that you're correct. We don't have enough people in the world who are motivated to do innovation and who know how to do it. despite talking about it for maybe 30, 40, 50, 60 years, that is the truth. And the thought comes to mind to train officials for that, and to make that part of their appraisal and promotion system, that they have been able to implement something new and to push their unit forward in some significant way, appropriate, to improve the welfare of the people. Because as I said, one of my slides showed the frontier of innovation should be to create tangible benefits for the people. It's not just little things, it's bigger things. So I think we don't have enough skills in the world for teaching, for people, for public officials who are that way. So within the realm of public administration, it is not very difficult to make innovation and creativity part of promotion standards, part of salary standards, and it's also not very difficult to train people. This is something that your national government does not yet do. And I don't know if there's an effort in Indonesia and any local cities to actually do this. That could be a topic of research project. Why are some Indonesian cities more innovative and creative than others? I mean, that would be a perfect dissertation or master thesis project to know. So that is not an unresolvable problem. I think you're correct. You're very fortunate that you have a problem that you actually have a solution for. There is something that is very innovative that happened in Korea also about 10 years ago, but they did not follow up on. It's the training of elected officials. And maybe I'll make that my final point. In democracy, elected officials do very well with holding civil service accountable and wanting to see tangible benefits because they need to be re-elected. But it is also true that many people who are elected to office don't know the roles of the civil service and actually don't know their own job. So I think what would be very interesting for the world is to have a training program for elected officials. Now many countries already have that in the area of ethics to avoid corruption. You see that in Korea, you see that in Japan, where elected officials, and in American cities too, when they're elected, the first thing they get is a one-day seminar on how to deal with their family. Right? But we can go beyond that. Many of them also don't know what the civil service do, and sometimes they are critical of the civil service. But a universal experience of elected officials is that when they have served in office for 4 years, they really deeply appreciate what the bureaucracy does. Can't we speed that up a little bit? Can't we help elected officials to get that understanding a little bit earlier? More like at the beginning instead of at the end? So I think if they have that understanding at the beginning, they might actually value and push those standards for innovation and creativity among elected officials, because they would very quickly see that when appointed officials, senior civil servants, are more creative and more innovative, they produce things that help elected officials to get re-elected too. So these things are not in conflict, and I think again this is very fortunate that in our time we know the solution to your problem, we just need to do it. So that is how I would answer that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ivan. So I think it's enough, the session. It's already an hour. So I have some points here, important points from your presentation and also discussion. So what can we learn for Indonesia in this context? So we have some challenges, not problems, right? But challenges. So first is how to do a sustainable or continuous learning from our innovation here, because sometimes when the mayor or maybe region change, so the program also change. No, it's not sustainable. And then how to improve the public participation in policy making, because in Indonesia it's still very low here. And then also the problem of leadership. As also you say that leadership matters, so we have also this challenge, because many of leaders in Indonesia, sorry to say, maybe not in the good quality to lead their local government. And also the main challenge is how to focusing the government vision, because like Seoul, they can make like top 10 cities in urban planning, blah blah blah. But in Indonesia we don't have like this. Our vision is very abstract. I can say like that. So So this is also the problem. And what Mr. Rudy said, it is in line with the study done by Tempo or Kompas in 2010. It shows that not more than 20% of local governments in Indonesia are ready to progress or to do reform. So most of them are not ready to do reform, and also in the framework of decentralization. So it is a problem, I think. Okay, I think that's the important point of our session here. Once again, thank you very much, Professor Ivan. So please.